should be up on the channel shortly. There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adventure on So Many Levels. We're gonna play some Dungeons and Dragons.
Deep.
Woo!
Deep.
Roll them dice, please.
I'm Christiana Ellis, and I am the Dungeon Master. Our players tonight, Chooch Schubert as Sequential,
Muted.
Paul Fisher as Zinhorn Windborn,
Good evening. Glad to be here.
Starla Hodgson as Carolina Swift,
Hello, friends.
Mark Kilfoyle as Nedry Shiny Rock,
Should I sort my questions based on urgency or time of incident?
and last but not least, we welcome back Vivid Muse as Trina of Harley.
Hey, y'all.
So, last week on So Many Levels, our new group of heroes fought an apparently living paint splotch. That's a thing, apparently.
An IDC, I think. I have to check my notes.
Well, you encountered this thing, seemingly originating from the junk around the wreckage of the Cunning Oaf Tavern, and chased it inside a porcelain and flatware wholesaler. Did a pretty good job of not wrecking the entire store during the fight. And then managed to subdue it, I guess, in that it's not moving around anymore and it's a little faded. So does that mean it's dead? Close enough. Better than when it's moving around and killing people. So,
Yes.
yeah. So you chipped up with a chisel the bricks that it was currently on, and also hefted up the corpse of the thug who had been killed by the thing in the process of stealing from a child. So everyone would kind of like, yeah, maybe we're not super sad about that. You know, we don't want paint splotches killing people, but maybe this guy's, we're not too worried about him. But his body was left entirely discolored, like completely, like just completely black, pitch black throughout his entire body, including the things in his pockets, his hair and clothing, etc. So you brought all that with you. You helped Emeril, the owner of the Cunning Oaf, recover some important documents. He gave you a few insights as to the history of the building. You also brought the body of Elister that you found in the pocket dimension to the Temple of Rushama. And where we left all of you, I believe we had Sequential, Nedry, and Trina on the way back to and arriving at the castle, which is your new place of business and or home. We had Carolina, who had lingered a little bit behind, but was probably on her way there as well. And Zinhorn, who had stopped at the temple, but would probably be on his way back as well. Does anyone, so for Carolina or Zinhorn, do you have any other, like, business that you would have engaged in before heading back?
I think off camera I would have talked to some of the people at the orphanage about the street kid that we met, and given them a description and where to find him, and to, try and make contact and start talking to him, start helping him, with an eye on getting him to come look at the orphanage and see what life could be like.
Yeah. All right. So I think that this is a somewhat routine matter for Zinhorn. Not that every kid isn't different in their own way, but there's overlap. You know, you've done this before, helped bring in kids who needed a place, and convincing them over time that maybe that place should be, you know, this one.
Hmm.
And so I think that you know, you're doing that. And what about Carolina? Were you kind of headed back as well, or?
Yeah, I'd be headed back in that general direction, but not rushed and definitely, I wouldn't say distracted, but anytime she sees someone she even knows even a little bit in passing, she stops to talk to them or she just like waves at people on the street. Like yeah. So yeah, she makes her way back that way, but yeah,
All right.
in that
So
manner.
So, part of why I ask is because we could, of course, do some scenes if they felt appropriate, but also just so we know exactly how much of a head start Sequential, Trina, and Nedry have. But I would imagine you, I think as we left, you were pretty much just arriving back at the, you know, Castle Sunia. So, are you, uh, you're just heading back inside, or were you going to stop off anywhere else on your way? That sounds like heading back just as I.
Yeah, because we have like a body, a
Yeah.
bag of shards, and a
Yeah.
bunch of bricks that we're dragging around. So I think the idea
Trina
is to go
doesn't-
back to the lab.
China doesn't mind helping, but ew, you know,
Yeah.
just head on back.
Yeah.
You
No
also
dallying.
have a few more gadgets that Trina spotted in the junk cleared out of the tavern that looked a bit like some of the ones that Sorashana had taken, and so you grabbed those. You have a few of those as well. But so you arrive back, head up the gangplank, and the doors open for you, and you hear Sunia just saying, "Welcome back. Is that a dead body?
Apparently,
Why does it
Yes.
look like that?"
That's what we want to find out. We're not quite sure. There's some sorts of interplanar, interdimensional something happening here for real.
I suppose technically we have two dead bodies. The other one's embedded on the bricks.
Yes, the perpetrator.
Well, I don't understand that, but I assume that you understand enough. So, why don't you head on up to the workshop? Sorashana is awake, and she's been working on some of the other devices that you pulled out, and I think she has some ideas about what sorts of missions she might encourage you all to participate next. Are Carolina and Zinhorn coming?
Presently.
Wonderful. Yobera and Brennan have suggested that tonight we have a dinner to celebrate your new terms of employment, and he has prepared the contracts.
Oh,
Excellent.
All right, so you head on up to the workshop level. Is everyone going there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, certainly
Yeah.
Trina is currently carrying this body. So I think
assuming that's where we intend it. Yes, that's where we're heading.
That's yeah.
Yeah. So you are heading up to that, you know, to the workshop, and once you emerge into that big space, you do see that Sorashana is, you know, up and working again. She does have her mask down, but she is using some sort of a unusual tool to examine some of the intricate pieces of one of the gadgets. But she turns to you, look in your direction as you enter, and then she just tosses the thing that she's been working on aside, and kind of goes over to stare with her head cocked at the body.
We have new mysteries.
So many.
he was consumed or maybe drained or possibly transformed by the IDC on the bricks.
do you hold those out? Like how are the bricks currently like how are you transporting those? Like you just have holding them in your hands or what?
I think
Yeah.
Sequential is carrying them because I got a bag of rocks. Or a bag
Yeah, I
of
was gonna try to.
ice.
Yeah, yeah. However he can, really.
Okay.
However they can.
Well, I mean,
I really thought it was just one brick in my head.
well, yeah, it's one piece.
Yeah.
Like so it was bricks mortared together and you kind of chiseled out the part that it was on. So it is more than one brick, but it is all in one chunk, not several pieces.
So yeah, they would just kind of hold it up and say,
Okay.
"There's an entity here that was mobile and acidic and all sorts of various properties, and somehow it removed the color of that individual and everything the individual was holding. It's all just blackened now."
She starts to reach out to just like grab it out of your hands, but then there's a moment of hesitation. She kind
We
of
think
takes
it's
a breath, and then she says, Is it okay if I have that?"
Absolutely.
And
Well, we wanted
Where
to
would you
take a
like
look
it?
at
I can put it somewhere to be studied.
so she, as soon as you had said absolutely, she was like reaching out to just grab it again, but then you kind of kept talking, so she freezes a little bit.
There's a specific workspace to that's best. I can set it there.
She points over where she has some various lenses, some that are just standard magnifying lenses, and some that seem to be different, like filters, polarized filters and colored filters, and so on. She
Right. Then yeah,
gestures over there,
set it in that workspace.
and then she looks over at the body that Trina is carrying, and just says, "Will that get smelly?"
Under normal circumstances, it probably would. I'm not sure if these are normal circumstances.
Would you want to examine it?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, of course.
We could try to do like a medicine check.
I need
It
to find
will.
out the way that the IDC interacted with the flesh, as opposed to all of these jingle, 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 which are mostly made of stone, some glass, a few things that were not exactly precious minerals, but close enough.
Surashana seems like she kind of is keeping her distance from Trina and the body. Trina, you're thinking probably it's the body that she's keeping her distance from, but she has the mask on, so you can't really see her face super
Yeah.
clearly, and so there's a little, it's like she's still a little. Her behavior is a little bit unclear, but she does seem to not approach you or get any closer to the body. She in fact goes the long way around a bench to go and look at some of the shards that are you just dumping those out like on the floor, or what are you doing with your
I think there
sack
was there a central sort of table or something in this room?
Yeah, but it has a bunch of stuff on it already.
Oh.
I mean, you could try to clear a space.
Probably try to heave the bag up on the table then, and kind
Okay.
of 3 or
So-
4 attempts to hip.
Yeah, well, especially because the thing is, it's not one solid piece inside, right? So, like, if you try to push the bag up, like, it just flops around, like, trying to get it up on the. So then once you, there are, stools in there that you are able to hop up onto to be at the table level. Are you just opening it up and taking things out?
Yeah, I'd kind of make a little space where I can start to categorize them. I put my book out on one side and open up to a fresh page with IDC examination, IDC residue examination written across the top, and then start categorizing each of those and just looking closely at them, smelling them, maybe tasting them.
tasting, huh?
Hmm.
All right. I think that Soroshana has come over to like watch you, and just see what you have there. But she's kind of, she's got her hands behind her back and she's kind of maintaining a couple of feet of distance. And I think when you taste one, she goes back to where the bricks are. Um, but you can go ahead and make an investigation check or an arcana check on these shards, if you like.
I think he would do Arcana. It's not really different in this case, but it's flavored appropriately. Oh, that would have been nice to start with a natural 20. It wasn't. 13 in total.
Okay. So I think that you're not able to get a lot more than what you had already concluded previously, which is that although you had absolutely seen this entity start fires when it had passed into through a wall, and then when it passed through the crate. Nonetheless, the stuff that you have here that was affected by it don't look like melted or scorched in the way that you would expect. That you would expect something that was like burned with heat to do. It looks more dissolved. And in fact, that there's a few places where you can see that it almost looks a little bit porous right on the edges. It is a little bit discolored, though. So it's a little bit unclear. Like you don't know off the top of your head exactly what would do that. But from an arcana perspective, you do get the feeling that although there is something unusual in the nature of this creature, that the what it did to the object itself was physical, not inherently magical. So like something about what this creature is caused actual physical damage to the object, as opposed to like magically disintegrating it.
Are there any materials that look like they're less affected by it, or were slower affected, or had some resistance to it?
What you find is that basically everything that it sort of ate its way through looks the same as I just described, and nothing that's not on the very edges of where it burned through seems to be affected at all. So
Okay.
even though it had gone through, like you had seen it on a surface where it would seem to move around in the surface almost like it was a fluid, but it seems like it only had any effect that you can see where it burned through. So the Soroshana has come over to the where you've got this thing, the remnants of this thing on the bricks sequential. But Trina, what are you doing right now, given that like no one has really directed you to put the body anywhere, and Soroshana seems to be avoiding that, and so what are you doing?
She's just kind of trying to stand back. This kind of investigation thing isn't her strong suit. So she's just trying to, be available. But she is going to, when nobody's looking, she's going to take her trunk and she's going to sniff her pits and she's going to, sniff her breath and see, is it me?
Well, so are you doing this with this guy's body's just still literally over
Well,
your
nobody's
shoulder,
told
or-
me yet what to do with them.
Oh, yeah.
So they got big brain stuff going on. I'm just
Sure.
going to stay out of the way. It's not overly heavy or anything.
I'm just amused by
just
the
a little quick sniff check over.
Yeah, I'm just amused by you checking your breath while you've literally got a corpse over your shoulder.
It's just weird. She just wants to be sure if she needs to take a mint, she'll take
Yeah.
a mint.
Well, go ahead and make a perception check, though, not for your breath, but just in terms of there were questions about the body, right, and that sort of thing. So this could be medicine if you had that, but otherwise perception.
Advantage on perception, so I'll go with that. 18.
Okay, here's a question for Trina, basically, just in her own sort of life experience. How
Okay.
much experience do you think she has with dead things? Not necessarily people, but, creatures that have been recently or not so recently killed.
Um, I feel like because she knows that she's not super smart or anything like that, she's always tended towards more physical pursuits. So I figure she would have been out and about and she would have certainly come across dead things. She wasn't spending her time in a library. So she would have definitely encountered dead stuff. I mean, she definitely would have encountered. Hold on a second. Let me read something real quick. I don't want to lie from my backstory. Um, I don't think that. Yeah, she hasn't experienced like a personal loss like that, so she won't have lost anybody she knows.
Well, I was thinking more in the matter of like what's normal for a dead body.
Well, this is certainly abnormal.
Well, the color, sure, but the
Yeah.
question of like, what other things might be different, right? The visual appearance is obviously different, but what else might be
Yeah.
different? And that's kind of what I was going to get at. But go ahead. What was the number?
18.
18. So that's pretty good. I think that you get a little bit of a sense that, especially when the question was raised about like, will it get smelly? Like, it's not been dead that long for to your understanding. I mean, it could, it's probably like less, no more than a couple of hours max, right? Just based on everything that's kind of happened. But at the same time, you kind of, in your experience, once something dies, like certain normal bodily processes stop happening and other processes kind of start happening. And with your keen sense of smell, you kind of would have expected to smell some more changes on this thing than have happened so far. So I don't think you necessarily know what that means. But if nothing else, at least so far, it seems like the normal process of decay, even though it wouldn't be very far along yet, isn't seeming to happen entirely normally here.
Is she distracted or involved in something, or is that something that I could relay to her since she asked?
Well, I mean, she is now over there with Sequential looking at the bricks. She seemed like the only question that she asked about it was whether it was going to get smelly, and then seemed to want to go over and look at other things. So
Yeah. I think in that case, she'll look towards Zinhorn as the cleric.
he's actually not there yet. 'Cause
Oh,
he
that's
went
right. You're not
right.
back yet. Okay. Well, she's just gonna just chill then because
Well, so Nedry is just kind of looking through his various things to
I thought
himself,
he
I
was.
think.
Yeah. She's used to like big brains and she knows to just stand back. So if they
Okay.
look like they're investigating and working, she's just gonna leave them alone because that's what
Aw.
works for her in the past. So
Just kind of standing there holding his body
standing
over
there
her
with a
shoulder.
dead body.
All right.
I mean, is there a clear bench somewhere? Because it sounded like the surfaces were covered.
Yeah, they kind of are. So it's something is going to have to be cleared in order to put this on a works table. But like, unless you make a decision about, well, that stuff looks fine to move, unless you kind of just make a call like that, there's not an obvious place.
What else is in the room? Is there, I don't want to put it on her cot, obviously, but like, is there a clear area in,
Well, so this room was obviously originally like designed as a library and reading room with a little bit of like gallery thrown in, like places
Yeah.
where you could put works of art or something like that. But
Yeah.
clearly more workbenches and tables and stuff have been brought in, and pretty much all available space has been taken up by Sorashano's various gear or artifacts that she's studying or made piles of the books that she is referencing or whatever. So, um,
Was there a garden area, or what
yeah,
was that?
yeah. So there was like a sort of an like um, I'm blanking on the word, but yeah, it's like a little greenhouse room sort of thing that had plants that was across the hall.
I mean, a museum gallery sounds a little fancier than she'd want to drop a corpse on the floor of. So, just thinking of keeping the carpet nice.
Sure.
But like, if is there, would she remember a place in that room where she
I
could
mean, I don't think that there is
just set it
necessarily
down?
there
Well,
wasn't like a big open place, but I think as you're standing there, maybe feeling a little bit awkward, you hear Sunia quiet.
That's
To
the
you.
chick's name, or
Yeah.
the
The
spirit's
yeah.
name.
She just says, Trina, are you just really attached to that body, or are you looking? Can I
I
help
would
you in some
love to
way?
set it down. Thank you for asking. I just can't seem to find an appropriate spot. Is there a place?
Give me just a moment, and you see a couple of like the door from the hallway opens, and a folded like tarp, like a waterproof tarpaulin that is kind of just floats in as though carried by an invisible person. And then it kind of goes over into the corner where there really isn't anything by some bookshelves and starts to unfold on the floor.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Of
She's
course.
just going to go over there and work it out, gently lay it down respectfully and all that.
Yeah. I think it's still kind of it's uncanny to look at. Like now that it's not over your shoulder, you can really just it's kind of remarkable that like even if you took like a statue or just a mannequin of a person and used paint to paint it all black, like you would still see the various different like bits of like light and contour in places
Mhm.
where like the light's reflecting off of it a little bit, whatever. But like this is just like from whatever angle you're looking at it, it almost is like just a silhouette.
Hmm.
But at the same time, when you touch it, it doesn't feel any different than you would expect. So
Okay.
sequential. You and Sorashana are looking at this, this color splotch. Um, it is no longer moving, of course, and the color is somewhat faded compared to the vibrant turquoise color that it had been when it was moving around. But are you just investigating it?
Hmm.
You can
Yeah.
do so with advantage because Sorashana is helping, and she's got gear like things to look at it through.
Investigatory gear. Investigators +5, 18.
Okay, that's pretty good. So I think as you are, you know, uh, as you use like the magnifying, glass to look at it, you see in somewhat a disconcerting way just that like it really looks as though this brick was somehow made of two different colored material. Like it doesn't look like there's any sort of a seam. And if you take little picks to it, right? What you find is that when you like chip a little piece of the surface away where it's discolored, the piece that comes up seems to leave the color behind it. And so when you lift off the little sliver of brick, the sliver is now the normal color. But the little divot where it was left behind is the blue color. And what you find somewhat to your surprise is that the color does not seem to interface with other visible light colors the way that you would normally expect. Like normally if you had something that was blue and you looked at it like say through a red filter or, a green filter, and just the ways that that would normally distort, the color that you see. Basically, when you look at it through any other like colored filter, it just it just sort of disappears. Like you look at it in visible light, you see the brick color and the blue, but through any other colored filter, it looks just like brick. And Sorashana, after observing that for a little bit, says, "The color's not in the surface, it's in our minds."
Huh.
I think it's fair for you, Sequential, to think that makes no sense, really.
It's a projection.
She doesn't say anything else after that, but she's just continuing to examine it. She asks, what was it like before?
Very active. I don't know that I would say it was necessarily aggressive. It seemed okay to hide or to simply exist in a certain space, but that it has all sorts of destructive properties. I mean, it would simply attach itself to kinetic objects and melt through things, and certainly seems, I don't know, for lack of a better term, almost maybe out of phase with the rest of the world at moments.
She taps her mask and just says, "Right now, I don't see anything in the ethereal, but the way that you describe its movement, I wonder if it would have looked different then."
Mm.
And
Hmm.
you saw it after it did. Deep breath. And she just kind of points at the body.
Yeah, we encountered it after the fact.
I think making assumptions about what sort of living processes it might have is not entirely appropriate, but if we were to compare to a living creature, it may have just eaten.
That makes sense.
She is looking.
Yet somehow it can eat hues and not physicality.
Was there any material that it seemed to avoid, or that it was not able to move in or pass through?
I don't think so. It was contained within a glass vessel at one point, and it simply bore through various materials.
So I think probably Carolina would have noticed this the most, but although it did inhabit the glass, when it went to sort of pass through, it was trying to go up through the lid. You don't know if that necessarily means that glass could contain it, but but in any case, she just says, "I am just thinking, just like I was just saying, we shouldn't assume that it works like living creatures that we know do. So that also means things like dying.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. So, do you think it's still a danger? Maybe this thing is still inert and might regenerate.
I think it, I don't know.
Should
We
definitely keep an eye on it.
I agree. At
Although,
most, we should not assume that it is entirely inert.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But best guess of how to contain it. I mean, the only best thing I know of to contain anything is lead, but who knows with this thing?
She says, perhaps, I wondered, in some cases, extra dimensional containers, more of the type that are more common, like a bag of holding,
Mm-hmm.
would sometimes be useful for such things. But if this thing does have extraplanar properties, I don't know if they would mesh well. There are, after all, many things that you do not want to put in a bag of holding.
Interesting. Yeah, perhaps pushing it into a pocket dimension isn't the best idea.
I propose that,
Or at least it'd be a good experiment. It'd be exciting.
I propose that at least for now, I have a vacuum container, bell jar, that we can pull the air out of, and it is sealed. I don't know if that will make a difference, but it seems as though it might be sound precaution. But I concur
Yeah.
that we should probably not leave it entirely unattended
Mhm.
for the time being.
Agreed.
And then she lifts up the mask just enough to kind of rub her eyes underneath it, and then lowers the mask again and just says, kind of, again, does just this awkward, like, pointing at the body, and just says, it's it's probably important, but I don't like it.
Hmm. I'm sure there's any number of places we could study it.
So, Nedry, I think that for that matter, Trina also. I mean, I think that you guys are, unless you would have left the room, you would be present, in the room while this conversation's happening. So
I wasn't sure if it was a small private conversation.
No. I think
Same.
they're having normal conversational volume over there, just at one end of this gallery. So I think that if you felt like you would be able to hear it, and if you felt like you wanted to join in, you could. That's why I'm mentioning it, because I figured you might think otherwise.
I think for at least part of that time, one of the reasons Nedry didn't respond was he was casting a spell, and it was taking him a while.
Okay.
Every once in a while, looking over, like wanting to say something, but no, if he breaks his concentration down, the spell will be lost. And just casting Detect Magic to see if there's magical residue and stuff like that. Or
so the magic that you find, you don't find really any magical residue on the various bits of just like porcelain and silverware that you've got back. They don't really show any residual magic to them. There is a little bit of transmutation. Is that one of the magic schools? I always forget. Hang on, let me look at the list.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a little bit of transmutation residue coming from the body. None from the bricks themselves, like where the splotch currently is. there's obviously magic in some of the various, contraptions that Sorashana has. But this also reminds you that some of the stuff that Trina brought with, excuse me, seems to be giving off some magic as well.
I have a few working theories, but I'm not sure how to go about testing them unless we can find another one of these which is alive. Or if this one isn't exactly dead, or if it isn't ever alive or dead, depending on whether it's an actual living being as opposed to some sort of phenomena of the universe and or potentially the expression of a magical feat happening at a different place. Kind of like how reflections in sunlight are not necessarily the actual sunlight itself, just kind of a trick of the eye. But one of the other theories that I'm working on is that it probably can't be contained by any normal material. It seemed to have some trouble with a few things, but eventually it was working around them or would find a hole. So maybe some sort of magical container. And I don't know much about extra dimensional bags and stuff just yet. I was told there were certain things you weren't supposed to do with them, so I haven't had a chance to run those experiments yet. But if it came from, and this is another part of the question I don't exactly know how to answer, but if it came from the pocket dimension, the disposal, would that have had the same effects as a bag of holding, for example, it being a pocket dimension? And if that's the case, then it didn't seem to interact with that. If it came from there, it probably went into the disposal by accident, or it could be a natural byproduct of the disposal itself. Imagine a creature that was able to essentially digest and redistribute what was necessary inside. They have something like that, I believe, in the sewer system. I'm not sure what it's exactly called. I was told not to go down there either. It's on my list.
So I think that Sorashana starts like as you're starting to present theories, I think she's sort of paying more attention to you now than she has. Like occasionally she's been a little bit like you're kind of intense with all your questions, and she's kind of keeping her distance a little bit. But you're definitely engaging her with these theories now, and she thinks a little bit and says, "Well, there are different kinds of different pocket dimensions and demiplanes that have different properties. For example, the classic examples of danger are the portable hole and the bag of holding. But for example, the demiplane that she looks over at Trina and says that Loxodons come from is very big, and you could take a portable hole into that place without the." She just kind of makes explosion gestures. So there are different properties, and I suppose it might depend on what sort of place it did come from. And I think she starts getting into some really, I don't want to say indecipherable, but very high level, just arcane theory about what it is she thinks the difference is between those different kinds of pocket dimensions. And I want it to be clear without me having to duplicate it, that she is just immediately starts talking at like PhD quantum physics type jargon about it. While that's happening, trying to make a perception check.
$16.
You get a little tap on your shoulder from someone you had no idea was there. I don't know if you are startled by it. I don't know if you startle that easily. But someone taps you on the shoulder that you hadn't realized it was coming up behind you.
So she's gonna turn around and see who it is.
It is Brennan. And he's there kind of, he doesn't have his hat on, but he's still got the kind of the nice vest, and he kind of grins at you with his tusks and just kind of says, I hope you won't take offense if I tell you that my impression is that you and I are not following a lot of what they're talking about right now.
She gives him a big dramatic.
So please forgive me making another supposition about you that you might enjoy coming down to the kitchen and helping me make dinner.
That sounds delightful. I would love to.
All right, follow me. And I think he does just sort of generally wave at everybody, just to, like, he's not secreting China away. It's more just kind of like, to the extent that you're paying attention, you notice, like, oh, yeah, there's China going off with Brennan.
She would have, if I can say, she would have interjected at some point the observation about the absent. It's the way you described it. It was more like, instead of an absence of color, it was like an absence of light reflecting any kind of color. So she would have expressed that to them, as well as the fact that he didn't smell like she would have expected him to smell, and that might be something. Shrug.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and point that out on your way out.
Yeah.
So I think that Brennan escorts you down to the first floor. Well, okay, it's the entrance level. It's the level that you come in on, even though you may recall that from the outside you're going up a gangplank that like takes you like 20 feet off the ground to get to the front doors. But it's on that level, and you see that this is a kitchen that is big enough that you could definitely have, with the right number of people, this is the sort of kitchen that could be preparing food for, 50, 60 people, right? Like this theoretically capable of, catering to a much bigger group of people. But you see that there is sort of one corner where there's a prep table and then an oven and kind of a stove that is kind of, that's the stuff that gets used, and everything else is kind of tucked away. But he has got some basically like roast chicken that he is sort of preparing out. That he says, I've got my my own special recipe for the the herbal rub on these chickens. Just out of curiosity, like, any dietary restrictions I should know about?
Sorry, I just need a second to decide this. I had been toying with the idea of making her vegetarian.
Well, I mean, that's fine. If you, that's why he's asking.
Yeah, she's vegetarian.
Okay. Oh, all right. So I hope it's not a problem to see the chickens there, but we've actually got a lot of like root vegetables here and some greens. What sorts of things would you like? I can also make sure we stock up on some, like, other beans and grains and that sort of thing for, future meals.
Well, what you've said already sounds great. I haven't had anything here that I haven't liked in this world. So other than making it a little more complicated, I'm, on the meat issue, I'm happy to try anything and everything, especially stuff that smells really, really fragrant. I'm finding that there are a lot of spices and herbs that I haven't encountered before that are just amazing.
Well, it just so happens that I usually prepare these chickens with sliced up carrots, potatoes, and parsnips. And all of the same herbs go on those too. So I think you might enjoy those just without the chicken part.
That sounds amazing.
All right. Well, know your way around a kitchen, or am I training up a new assistant? I hope you don't take this as presumption. I'm not expecting you to cook for everybody like it's an obligation. I just kind of guessed that you might be into it. If I'm wrong, tell me so. No problem.
I mean, it's not like I want to do it every night, I'm sure, but I'm definitely interested to learn and see how, because I haven't really gotten to play in a kitchen here. So I'd love to see how you guys prepare Earth on this side of the portal.
Well, that's great. So, like, I usually do most of the cooking. Obviously, if you guys are going to stick around, I'll be doing it a little more than usual. It's nice to have someone to talk to down here, but I consider this my job. Anytime you want to help, that's welcome. Otherwise, it's not on you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So I think that he's probably like showing you around where like knives are and where the spices are kept and all of that sort of thing. And you see that Sunia actually helps out with a few things too, just carrying stuff around, a little unseen servants, just on request, that sort of thing. So
Trina's just excited and loving it all. This is just so fun. It's like a little kid at the circus almost. She's just like loving it. It's very different from what she's used to.
nice. So I think probably we can say that Trina, or excuse me, that Zinhorn and Carolina would, well, let's just say for convenience sake that you end up arriving back at approximately the same time. Maybe you catch each other, on the stairs or something, heading back up to tier 3.
There is one thing that I was thinking about on my way up. Because she's a little more frugal. Generally, she doesn't like splurge on stuff, but she probably would have kept an eye on the shops as she went up the stairs, looking for something for Shorashana, actually. So any kind of maybe a little like portable tool set, or just some kind of something she might like, given what she knows about her, which is that she likes gadgets and things. So just something small, inexpensive.
Nice. All right. Yeah. So I mean, I because as established, we have lots of stores that are kind of, that run the gamut from being like the beach town tourist shop to like Sky Mall or Sharper Image. Like, I think there are definitely places like that where you could get something a little gimmicky. Or are you looking a little bit more like you would be going to some like actual sort of craftsman shop?
Well, I'm thinking something definitely more utilitarian, and functional, because
Okay.
that seems to be the kind of thing that she's drawn to. So perhaps if there were some little, like a screwdriver enchanted to, go on its own, like turn in a screw or something like that, just something small.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, what sort of a budget are you imagining for this?
Only like, because I don't have a ton of money, so I'm just thinking like 1 or 2 gold pieces, maybe, just like tiny, like not just a little something to say, hey, I saw this and I thought of you, and here.
Give me just a second. Just trying to think. Make sure I'm thinking about prices first. Yeah. So I think the trick here is that, like, even relatively simple magic items get expensive pretty fast.
Right.
But there are ones where, like, the magic of them is less about the functionality of the tool and more about, like, oh, how about this? There is you find a screwdriver that has a little tiny enchanted light on the handle that's designed to point at where this tip of the screwdriver goes.
Perfect.
All right. I think you can find one of those. Well, how about this? Here's the thought. Do you maybe you are just coming out of the shop with that when you encounter Zinhorn coming up the stairs?
Yep. Hi.
Hi, Carolina. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. You went to the temple? How did it go?
It went very well. we had a small private ceremony, very respectful. And then I took care of a few other things, and I'm, headed back here. What have you been up to?
Just collecting a few of my belongings, and I picked up something for our new friend, and I'm headed back.
Awesome. Shall we walk together?
Yes, let's. Up we go. Do, 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 do,
All
do.
right, sure. So I think you're probably, most of the way there already. So I think when you come back in, you are greeted by Sunia, who welcomes you and lets you know what she told the others, which is that dinner is being prepared. Trina is currently with Brennan in the kitchen on that, and the Nedry, Sequential, and Sorashana are up in the workshop. But dinner will be ready in about an hour, and Yobert has had the contracts drawn up.
All right. Sonia, do you
Yes?
think Gilbert would mind if I used the sending stone?
I don't think he would mind at all.
All right. So that's where I'm gonna head.
Okay. It's on the same level as the workshop. You can we can just have you follow on up there and head there first. So I think that if you it's the sending stone was in this little reading room that's separate across the hall from the workshop. So would you stop in at the workshop first, or just head straight for the sending stone?
I might poke my head in to kind of check on the status, but I'd see that everybody was pretty busy and
Yeah.
duck back out again.
You see Sorashana with the mask on, gesturing broadly about trying to describe the the valence resonance fields of one type of quantum entanglement versus the magical contrived lensing that occurs with and I
Eyes
think
are just glazed over.
Yeah.
Like, no.
But you could certainly wave at the others.
I don't know if any of them would see me because they're pretty engrossed, but
Trina,
I-
if she stopped by the kitchen, would have waved her in and made her try a fork full of something.
Well, it
This
sounds
is so
like she,
good.
Well,
You've got to
sounds-
try this.
She might be going. We'll see about after this. But I guess she went up to the sending stone first, right? Or yeah. So you stop in at the sending stone and
and is there a like there's not like a distance limit on where you can send it, just like on this plane, right? Or is it?
this one, yeah, it's on this plane. Like
Oh,
know
well,
that,
that's fine. That's all I need. But I'm trying to figure out just like, does this count as a long distance call? Like, because it's not within the city. So,
no. I think that these things are commonplace enough that you kind of you know that, right? Like you wouldn't even need to
well,
ask
yeah, I
about
was
it.
asking for me.
No, I know,
personally. I don't know.
I'm telling you the answer, and also that it is the sort of thing that most people would know about.
Okay. So I actually wanted to send a message to Siona,
Okay.
because I do check in with her occasionally, just to let her know that, I'm still safe and, pass on any news.
Sure.
But mostly just to say, hi, I'm still here. I haven't died yet. But this is kind of an exciting thing. So, yeah. So I would say, Siona, I have fantastic news. I got a new job, and it looks like I'll be able to travel at last.
All right. So I think, let me think. The answer you get back is, "Oh, darling, I'm so glad to hear that. I knew you'd land on your feet. Be careful, but also be brave and have fun, sweetheart.
It just makes me happy. She kind of giggles to herself, and then and she pauses, and now I've forgotten because the name is Sunya, because it's Siona. Sunya. It's yeah, confusing. Anyway, so she would stop for a moment and say, Sunya, is there a place, because we weren't really told, like, if, because we have the beds and stuff in the sleeping area, but I need some kind of like a foot locker or something to that effect, to put my things in.
I mean, I think that there are foot lockers up in that room. So this is just in the meta. There were foot lockers in there. So are you asking for a different one somewhere else, or are you?
Oh no, if she knows that, then she wouldn't ask that. But I did actually have one other question.
Okay, sure.
For Sunya. Sunya, you can see everything in the castle all the time, right?
Well, it's a little hard to explain, but more or less.
So, more or less.
Well,
Well, I mean, I understand you don't like physically have eyes. That makes sense. But is it more like an awareness of where everyone is rather than like?
yes. So I think perhaps an example that has been helpful before is if I were to say, "Can you see when you're hungry or not?" You don't
That does
see
make
that you're
sense.
hungry, but you know.
But you know basically what everybody is doing and kind of what they're up to, especially if they're like touching any surfaces. Like that's kind of you, right?
Yes and no. I am not physical in quite the same way that you might be thinking. I am not the physical castle. I am the spirit of the castle.
So more like instead of the body, more like the blood that runs through its veins?
More like the ghost that haunts the place.
I like you. You're so much fun.
Well, it's nice to be appreciated.
And so she told us where everyone was, right? And she said Trina was in the kitchen. So that's where I'm headed.
All right. Zinhorn, what about you?
I need to take a quick break.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'll be right back.
Okay. So, Carolina heads down then to Trina.
Hi, what are you guys doing?
Eat this. She shoves a fork in her face. Doesn't shove it in her mouth. Consent's important. But she holds it in
You
front
go
of her face.
90%. You let her do the last 10%.
That's it. So
okay.
good. You like food, right?
Of course.
Cool.
And so I will, just with a little hesitation, because I know Brennan is typically the cook, and I know he's
Yeah,
about in the kitchen, so
he's
I don't
standing
hesitate
right there.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't hesitate long, and I will give it a try.
I mean,
Brennan's recipe, isn't it so good?
you know, it's not always true that a big nose is a sensitive nose, but hers is certainly both.
It is certainly a marvelous nose.
Guys.
Well, not everybody has the same kind of discerning palate to really tell the difference between, the I was going to say the Thai basil, but like, would it be Thai basil in another world? Because they wouldn't know what Thai is. Ugh.
Bashan basil.
Sure, the
Feywild
Fashan Bale,
Basil.
yeah, versus the, you know, the
Villanocta.
Valentine. Like it's
Oh yeah.
but yeah, it's nice to have that, discerning palate. So, yeah, welcome back, Carolina. Did you all have a, productive day? I'm not really sure what you all were doing, but, I suppose we'll talk about that at dinner.
It was very exciting. I threw plates.
Great. I look forward to hearing why that was necessary.
I promise I won't at dinner. It was fun, but situational.
So, I think Nedry and Sequential are still up there with Sorashana, and I think, like, at some point, I don't know how much of a quantum magic lecture you are willing to just stand there through.
Nedry's taking lots of notes he'll have to pour over for the rest of his life.
I think that, well, how about this? Both of you make an Arcana check, or Intelligence if you don't have Arcana, but I think you both do, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be the rest of his life.
Yeah, I got a 6.
I got a nat 1, which brings me to a 6.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Same.
yeah, I mean, so I think what you get out of this is that she sounds like she thinks she knows what she's talking about, at least, but you feel like it's enough over your head that you're not able to, like she could be making stuff up for all you know. But she seems to be able to speak on it extemporaneously without, in fact, actually, when she really gets going on that, she loses a lot of the sort of stilted quality to her speech that she has at other times. She kind of just gets on a roll with it. But eventually she says, and that's why I think that it would probably be safe to put it in a portable hole, but we would still want to do it outside.
Do you know that, or does Kosh know that?
She kind of goes like completely still for a moment, and you can make an insight check if you like.
I probably can't, but I can certainly try. That is an 8.
Yeah, I think that, like, she's still wearing the mask. She is kind of inscrutable. She is enough kind of unusual already that, like, okay, she has gone from unusual A to unusual B. What does that mean? But it presumably means something. But she kind of just goes still and quiet for a moment, and then just says, Kosh doesn't know things, but Kosh sees things.
Huh. I'll add that to my theory. Does Kosh see anything weird about the body? Because the body looks a little weird to me. It's got some residue, some transmutation magic. I don't think it's exactly how the creature reproduces, but that is a possibility. It's one of the theories I'd like to work down.
So she kind of glances hesitantly over to it and starts to just, like, fidget with her hands. And I think you don't need an insight check to see that, like, she does not want to go anywhere near that body. She just, like, she's obviously, like, curious about it, but at the same time does not make any move to approach it.
Nedry hops off his chair and walks immediately over to it.
Sure.
So it's wandering around it, sort of poking the body with his pen every once in a while.
Yeah.
Seeing if it reacts differently.
Sure.
I don't know much about live things and living things, but the residual magic is kind of interesting. It may just be the result of its actual natural processes or natural magical processes, if those things aren't contradictory.
Well, so go ahead and make an investigation, or I guess Arcana check. Let's say, we've been using Arcana for this in this study, so I think that's fine.
Okay.
You could do it with advantage if sequential is helping.
Yeah, definitely.
Good,
Yeah.
because I'm rolling really badly tonight. Wow. Okay, so the first one was a 2. That was awful. So I rolled again and got a 1.
Oh no.
A total of 6.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's weird that what happened to this body seems to be so different than what happened to the materials it burned through. You don't know why that is, but it's obviously different for unknown reasons.
It might be some sort of soul eater. That would explain maybe some of the difference between living and eating a living thing, or it just might be that strange thing which is life altogether. I haven't been able to isolate that in many of my studies, and every time I bring it up, Master Argus just sort of tells me to go somewhere else. I don't think he really likes working with bodies. Can't blame him.
Ah,
Maybe we should make sure that the body is also contained within some sort of portable hole, just in case. But we'll probably want to study it and pull it out every once in a while just to make sure, in case it does change.
I think you and Sequential were over there, kind of checking that out. And I think when you look back over, Sorashana has literally gone back over across the room and has reabsorbed herself in looking at the bricks. And she has started to prepare the thing that she talked about, which is basically, it's like a bell jar that you can use equipment to create a vacuum inside. And she is doing that, but like she literally just without even saying anything, she is gone off to do something else.
I don't think biology is her favorite.
It's not mine either,
What?
to be honest. Living beings kind of, I don't know, don't make any sense. Magic, on the other hand. And spirits, too. I wonder if it's a kind of spirit. If it is a kind of spirit, then maybe some of the tricks that are used to work with spirits can also work on it. And if we could figure out a way to contain it, we could find a way to contain spirits, too.
Hmm.
Sunia
Good proof.
speaks up at
Very
that and
useful.
says, well, most of the time when spirits are battled or defeated or destroyed, they don't leave a physical body at all. Now, I know that color seems to, I don't know if you call that a body, but it left something behind, which is not usually what a spirit would do.
True. And something Sorashana said about possibly that it was eating, that maybe it ate, but so the residual color might be this guy's residual color. Like, I don't know. I don't know how one would eat a color, but this thing doesn't act like most things do.
Yeah, and if we were to take all the colors that were him and mix him, I would think it would turn out brown the way it does when kids try and mix all their paints.
Yeah.
Not some color of blue. This is kind of a faded, less alive version of the color that was there before.
That might have been the color of the shield.
That's a thought.
So I'm assuming then that Zinhorn had just come up to join the investigation in the workshop.
Zinhorn just drops into a conversation as if he's been there the entire
Well,
time
that's-
and no one noticed him.
That's fine. I was just going to say, since we have you back, I was going to ask what Zinhorn had gotten up to, and if going up to join the investigation is the answer, then
Well,
By all
he's
means.
going to see what everyone else is doing and see if he can help and if there's something else that we're all going to go off and do at some point.
well. So
Yesterday
right
was
now,
very
Carolina and Trina are down in the kitchen with Brennan. You haven't heard from Yobert since you've been back, but you've been told that he prepared contracts and that you'd be having dinner shortly.
I have forgotten that I needed to take my duffel bag back to the room. So I would leave the kitchen at one point, do that, and I would probably stop by the workshop on my way back down.
Okay. Would you have just done that when you went up there to begin with, or I mean, whatever you want.
Uh, Probably not,
Right.
because I wouldn't have seen Trina in the workshop, but the sending stone was there, so
Okay.
just go make sure everybody is there. So, yeah, that I would excuse myself from the kitchens to go put away my things, and then on my way back down, stop into the workshop, and notice that it's getting a bit crowded in here. So I will see those three kind of crowded around the body, and I've got that screwdriver in my pocket, so I'm going to go over to where Shorashana is, and I will set the screwdriver near her, and say, "I found this for you. I saw this, and I thought of you, and I thought it might come in handy. It's nothing fancy, but."
So she does kind of a double take. Like at first, you're speaking, so she glances over like at the sound, but then looks away like, oh, surely you're not speaking to me, and then kind of a double take. Oh, you are speaking to me, and then kind of is a little bit wary, but kind of looks down and peers at the thing, and then she goes back over to another bench, pulls out like a big pair of tongs, and takes the tongs and then drops the screwdriver into a beaker of clear liquid, and then turns to you and says, "Thank you."
Okay. Um, I'm glad you like it. But it seems to me you work with a lot of machines and gadgets and metal things, inorganic things, and I wonder if maybe having that person in here is not conducive to your work environment.
She kind of goes still for a second again and says, I have to, it's important to understand. I don't like it, but I'm trying to be better at things I don't like.
And that is very important, and really it's a very brave thing to do stuff like that. But this is a workspace, and it's important that we concentrate on work and not have distractions around us when we're trying to work, because then you can't work as efficiently, right?
I don't know what you're asking.
Sunya,
Yes?
is there maybe a small room that's not being used at the moment?
We could put it in the exotic bird room.
Oh, yes, you did say there were no birds, right?
That's correct. I
think
certainly
that
wouldn't
might-
want to put any birds in there if we're going to put a dead body in there.
Oh, no, I can understand that. Well, I mean, some kind of birds might enjoy that sort of thing, but I think in general, the kind of birds that we would keep would not. Anyway, maybe it would be better to move the things for organic in nature for study to that room, and leave this room to the metal bits and bobs that you have.
I think that's an excellent idea. And you see the door to the hallway open, and then two of the corners on one end of the tarp kind of just lift up, and then just very slowly the tarp starts dragging.
I don't think it's doing that on its own. At least I hope not. Kind of poking at it as it's moving.
Sunya just says, "I'm doing it. It's fine."
Oh,
I'm
Where
just
are we
putting it
taking
across
this?
the hall into the bird room. It's just across the hall. But I think as soon as it's out of the room, Soroshana does like look over to you, Carolina, and she lifts her mask and just kind of doesn't quite make eye contact, but does just kind of nod and just say, "Thank you. That is better."
I thought that might help with your concentration because this is all very important and very. It's a lot. I heard a little bit about what you guys were talking about before, and that requires a lot of brain power. So I think it's important to not have distractions like that around when you're trying to concentrate.
Yeah. She puts the mask back down.
And I will step away. I'm going to leave her alone because, boundaries.
Sure. All right. So I think, does anyone else have anything that they kind of wanted to get to before dinner? Because I think it's just about that time.
Yeah, I don't think so. Sequential would want the different, see if the bits and bobs that Trina had found in the wreckage, the new magical stuff to
Yes.
investigate. Since Sequential doesn't really eat, he'd like to take it to the end of the table and fiddle with it while everybody else is eating.
Sure, sure.
Determine what the properties are of these things.
Yeah, so I think Soroshana is very into helping you just figure that stuff out. So she would definitely help you with that. What about you, Nedry? Would you help with that, or are you still kind of studying your own stuff?
He'd look jealously over at it, but he doesn't understand mechanical things, so it would kind of you kind of avoid them. Going back to the categorization and cataloging of the shards that he picked up and the metal bits and pieces, kind of doubling the writing he's doing down, and then kind of writing the margin and trying to sketch them out, that sort of thing.
All right. So what you find in the collection there, actually, so Zinhorn, where did you end up going? Kind of while that was happening.
I headed up to where they were serving dinner to see if the contracts had been laid out to start reviewing those.
Sure, sure. So I'll catch up with you in just a moment with that. Sequential, you and Soroshana identify that you've got another one of these sort of grenade type things. That this one seems like it would spray out some kind of acid. Not in a big area, but like you would almost have to like hit something with it to affect it. But that whatever you hit with it would presumably be subjected to some kind of acid. And then there are two big things and two small things. One is it is a ring that seems to have some. Well, okay. Here's what I'm actually gonna say is that some of these things are not like neither of you have the identify spell currently. If I'm not, so remind me.
Yeah.
Well, are you over there helping them with those things?
Well, I'm still in the room and I can't be completely helpful, but if someone were to say something.
Well, they're over there
you-
looking at this stuff. So if you like, I don't think they call you over, but you could go over there.
So if I'm casting something as a ritual, it's not using a spell slot, right?
Correct, but it does take an extra 10
Yeah.
minutes. So it would be 11
Yeah.
total minutes for an identify.
Right. Well, we kind of got, like, what are we doing?
Sure. So I think Sequential and Soroshana can definitely identify that there are two that seem like whatever they can figure out what those things do because they seem to be of a low enough level that there's not really danger in just playing with it. But
Mhm.
there's two that seem like, you would want to examine it more carefully, and so those would be the two that if you have identify ready to go, then those would be the ones.
Yep.
So there's one that seems like it is like a metal ring. You could wear it like a standard ring, but it also it's pretty bulky for that, and it does seem to have some sort of like almost like a gearbox on it, like if it one of those great big huge like class rings or championship rings, but like it's got little mechanisms on it.
Like a poison ring, kind of. That size.
Um, yeah, maybe, but like it's pretty bulky. Like you would probably not want to just wear it around all the time because it's like heavy. But the other thing seems to be some sort of it's not like a gem, but it's kind of some sort of a stone that looks as though it's designed to be added to something else. But it's not clear what it would be. But while you're, so which one of those are you focusing on?
Well, the ring would catch my attention first.
Sure, sure. So you start an identify ritual with that one?
Yes.
All right. So I think while that's happening, Sequential and Surashana kind of play with the two smaller ones, and you discover that one of them is just this little sort of orb that has like a lens on it, and when you pick it up, it projects out a small illusory like image of a woman's face, and you discover that like when you're holding it at one direction, like the face is smiling, but when you turn it, like the expression changes, and so like depending on which way you're pointing the lens, the face is the same except the expression changes. So like angry, sad, scared, happy, laughing, etc. But that seems to be all that it does. The other one is an amulet, and you definitely detect that it's just going to also project some sort of a minor illusion. And so Surashana suggests that you put it on, Sequential.
Yeah.
And when you do, all of a sudden you just see that there's illusions of little fish swimming around you as though you're underwater.
Can anybody else see this?
Oh yeah, yeah, they are visible, but illusions. Like they're not real fish. You can put your hand through them, but actually, I take that back. They're clearly illusions, but they are clever enough that like when you put your hand up, like if she puts her hand up, they go through it. But if you put your hand up, the fish swims around it like it's avoiding your hand.
That's very clever.
So when you are done playing with those, Carolina, you finish your first identify, and I'll give you this as a magic item later. But basically, what this does is it's a gravity nullifier. But what it does is effectively, it has the effect of the levitate spell, but you can like turn it on and off for 1 hour. Meaning you can sort of choose to have it raise you up or down 20 feet as part of your movement on a turn. And it'll last for an hour, but it seems like once you do that, it's completely dead. It'll go for an hour once, and then it'll be useless. So
Like not recharging at all, just
no, correct.
one and done.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to just briefly mention here in a meta sense for the game, this applies for everybody, is that kind of inspired by something called ciphers from another game system, the idea of having a wide variety of magical items that are not just use it forever, but like you use it once or twice, and that sort of thing. I like the idea of introducing more of those, but part of what will encourage you to maybe actually use them instead of just, hanging on to them forever and never using them is the promise as a DM that if you use yours, I'll give you more.
Yeah.
However,
yours.
you
Deal.
you won't hoard them because if you don't use them, you stop getting them.
Yeah.
But my advice and my hope is that you will use them, and I'll give you more to replace them.
Yeah.
So that's so some of these things that are like only one use, like the grenades or like this sort of thing, it'll you don't want to hang on to it because, oh my gosh, I'm probably going to need this for the end boss 3 years from now. Like that's
Yeah.
don't do that. Use it the first time you feel like it would come in handy, and that's fine.
I
So
will fight the urge.
yeah.
So Gwenchel almost used the soap grenade on the burning box. Yeah.
So that's just a general thing that I will mention about some of these types of things that you're going to find. But flavoring in world is that these are some sort of an old Magitech that you don't fully understand, and maybe it's wearing out or doesn't quite work the same way, and so like it's not just a permanent enchantment the way some of the other magic items you might be used to are. But all
I would encourage. Carolina to take the acid grenade since she doesn't have any real ranged weapons. Maybe try throwing that at something instead of a plate.
Seems really mean, but if you think it's a good idea.
Might be more effective. That's all I'm saying. Only really bad guys,
So I think while that's happening, Zinhorn, you go down to the level, one level down where you had previously seen the map room, and Sunia lets you know that that's where the contracts are laid out, and that you'll be eating dinner in the big hall that's also on that level, where you can actually sort of peek in there and you see what looks like it might under other circumstances be like a throne room or like a reception hall or anything, but it's mostly just got one table that's kind of been set out for the right number of place settings. But you go into the map room and you do see 5 contracts like laid out, and Yobert is actually in there reading over them, and he just says, Zinhorn, welcome.
You're bear. Good to see you.
So I hope you all had a productive day.
Yes, very productive. One body laid to rest, another being examined. Did you not hear about the living splotch of color that killed a man?
Well, I was informed by Sunia that you had brought back some kind of a specimen. I had expected to have you let me know what you feel is pertinent. I suspected we would discuss it over dinner, is my point.
Well, yes, we can discuss the rest of it over dinner, but we managed to kill it. If it were ever truly alive, I mean, it's not doing anything now. Hopefully it won't start up again. But we brought it back here for Sorashana to look over and try and figure out what it was and, how to deal with it better if we should run into one again.
Well, good work.
Oh, thank you.
So, do you think it's connected to the equipment and refuse and everything that came out of the the pocket dimension that you were in.
The disposal, yes. It seems to have come from there. It appears to have been attached to some kind of a shield, which was found by a street child, and a very unpleasant man attempted to take it away from him, and the blue thing that was on the shield jumped off and attacked the man. And
Curious.
his corpse is in your exotic bird room. Everything about the corpse, including his clothes and what he had on him, like papers, everything was turned completely black.
Fascinating. Have you ever encountered anything like that before?
I have never seen anything like that before.
Remarkable. Well, I'm sure Sorashana will appreciate the opportunity to study the specimen, although I'm not sure how excited she'll be about the body. I just know that tends to not be the sort of thing that she brings back herself.
Yeah, that's. I think that's why they moved the body out of her workroom to the exotic bird room.
Yes,
So that-
I'm sure you've noticed for yourself that Sorashana does have some sensitivities.
Yes, I've on occasion dealt with children that have similar sensitivities, but each person is unique in that way, and so I'm glad they were able to make her feel more at home, especially in her own workroom.
Yes, I have to say, I mentioned this last night and again this morning, but in my experience with Sorashana, she is generally very reluctant to have any contact with other people at all. Brennan and myself have only gradually become exceptions to that. And even still, she tends to, keep some degree of remove. But the fact that she brought you all back seems to me to be a tremendous step forward for her. And I definitely want to encourage it as I can. And on top of that, of course, it seems just serendipitous, if not fated, that we should all come together in a opportunity to do some good out there.
Yes, I feel very good about that.
Excellent. Would you like to look over the contract?
Yes, I would.
So he had been standing up at the map table when you came in, but after a few moments, when he offers to have you, to look at the contract, he does take a seat. There's one contract for each of you, although they do seem to be 5 copies of the same document. So go ahead and make an investigation check to, read through it. It's not like super long and filled with tiny print or anything, but, reading contracts is a skill.
I got a 5.
Okay. I think that probably it is. Well, so let's just talk briefly about Zinhorn. Is he used to contracts? Has he done anything like that? Is that ever something he's dealt with?
He may have looked them over once or twice, but it's certainly not something that he deals with on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
He's much more used to dealing with people and, and making deals and resources, and occasionally those things have to be written down, but a lot of times it's a shake of the hand, kind of thing.
Sure. You're more likely to rely on the insight check of the person offering the contract rather than the words on the paper.
Right. Or, someone who is trained in dealing with contracts, paying them to review it.
Sure. So I think as you're scanning, he kind of says, So the language is pretty standard, but I'm happy to go over any particular details that you may have questions about. The basic gist is that we have a stated objective as a group, which is to explore these pocket dimensions where we find them. There is some degree of liability in the sense that there's an acceptance that there is some degree of danger and that it is understood as part of the employment, but with the caveat that you are never obligated to go anywhere that you do not volunteer to go. So you are never forced to go into some place that you feel is dangerous. But if you do choose to go somewhere, there is no enforced liability. However, if you look on this page, and he shows that like there is like simultaneously a severance, like, so it's sort of like life insurance, right? Like it's basically if something horrible were to happen, there's no lawsuit, but there is this generous settlement that's already part of the contract.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, yeah, so it would be to say, don't try to get more because you get this. You know, but it also has as part of the, you know, the contract that, you know, what your compensation would be, that you would have access to a line of credit, you know, subject to review, but otherwise, you know, empowered to make purchases, you know, as needed. And that the, you know, there's compensation, access to like room and board, and of course, the ability to withdraw at any time for, you know, for either party.
Okay. Is it the kind of thing that he might be able to read out to someone over the sending stone, or?
The sending stone can only do 25 words at a time, so probably
Ah.
not. However, he does say that I had kind of hoped that we would celebrate signing the contract with, you know, with dinner. However, I want all of you to feel entirely comfortable, and if you feel like you want to take the contract to show someone else, I'm more than willing to allow that.
That only seems prudent.
I understand.
So, Zinhorn will try and dig a little bit further into it, just in an attempt to be companionable.
Well, if you like, you can make an insight check as he's just explaining everything.
Okay, I would like to do that.
Sure.
I got a 10.
Okay. Well, I mean, you had previously, you know, sized this guy up, right? And I think the impression that you had gotten from him previously is, you know, is held up here, which is to say, it's not necessarily that, like, he may have things that he's not telling you, but none of them are things that he feels like you would need to know, right? Like, it's more about he has some things that are private, but he's not withholding any important information from you. Like, he's not keeping secrets that would be, like, that would affect you. And
Okay.
that I think your impression of him describing the contract clauses is he seems to feel that everything is very straightforward and ordinary. Like, that's your impression as he's describing it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't sign contracts without having somebody
No,
reading them. But Zinhorn is not me. And he trusts people, so I think just based on his intuition, he would probably be okay with signing at dinner if that's what everyone else is going to do.
All right. Well, on that note, I think you at about that time receive word that dinner is currently being served. And I think, Trina, if you are down there still in the kitchen, I think Brennan encourages you. He's taken his own apron off, and he just says, and we don't have to do the serving because Sunia is quite good at that. So if you want to accompany me up to the dining room, and he kind of offers you an elbow.
And she takes it clumsily because she's never done that before.
Right. And then Sunia lets everyone else know we're in their respective spots that dinner is being served. And so you all make your way up there. Zinhorn, I think you watch. You had previously noticed, that Yobert does seem to have some kind of infirmity, right? Like, you did see him standing briefly, and he does stand to go into the dining room and take his seat, but he does seem frail. Like he looks like he's only in his 40s, but he does move a little slow, and takes great care when he's standing or sitting.
Mm-hmm.
As everyone comes in, the dinner is being set. It's as previously mentioned. There's roast chicken for those who want it, and all sorts of other vegetables and everything, and wine and water to drink.
As usual, Nedry has piled up a plate of a bit of everything and 2 glasses.
Sure. Sorashana does come down. She does not change her clothes or anything, but she does put the mask up. She does not sit at the same table with everyone else, though. There's a small table off to one side that she takes a seat at. That's just one chair there. But it's like in the vicinity, right? Like so that she could be part of the conversation, but just not physically at the same table.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, sequentially go to the far end of a table, to be away from everybody, so they can work on stuff and not
So
bother people's food.
Yeah, I think Brennan does go up to you at some point and just say, "Sequential. That's your name, correct? Yeah."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I notice it seems like you don't eat. That's right?
True. Not necessary.
Okay. Well, so I guess doesn't bother you when everyone else is eating, or is there anything else I could? Would you want oil or something?
No, I don't really require anything. Just certainly don't want to be rude and
All right.
need
Well,
to be part of the conversation, but I don't really need anything. Thank you. I
sure.
appreciate
Well,
it.
if you think of something, let me know.
I appreciate the thought.
So everyone else kind of takes a seat.
Nope.
Yep, Nedry's got a big space for his book beside him, which is open, and
Sure.
he's jotting in it with one hand while stuffing things in his face with the other, occasionally looking at what he's eating and then writing something down.
So Yobert does, he doesn't stop you from getting started or anything. There's no sort of formality in that regard. I think you do notice that Sorashana certainly just starts eating. She doesn't wait for anything to happen. But Yobert does hold his wine glass up and he just says, "We broke our fast this morning together. But I think that this really represents a more formal beginning to our partnership. I've already gone over the contracts with Zinhorn in the other room, but we have the map room over there with all of your contracts, and I would be happy to discuss any particular details you may have questions about, or if you feel like you would like to show them to someone else, I understand that completely, but I have made an effort to make these contracts very favorable to all of you, because you, of course, are the ones that are undertaking acts of bravery in the pursuit of making the world a better place. And I believe that deserves compensation and protection. And so that is what I have attempted to do with these contracts. And I hope that together, all of us will be able to deepen our understanding of these strange wrinkles in our known universe, and to help people who may find themselves impacted by them. And I'm very pleased to have all of you here in my home and to share both a meal and a mission with you.
Here, here.
You're here.
So I think he encourages you over dinner to tell him all about whatever you got up to that day.
Oh, yeah. Carolina would absolutely just launch into a colorful tale, not untrue, but very vivid language in great detail, expounding on Nedry's boundless curiosity and Sequential's steadfast, dedication to, finding things out and sticking to the mission and keeping people safe. And Zinhorn, his desire to preserve and protect, and with minimal damage, to the collateral damage. So yeah, she's spinning this tale about everything they did over the day, the grand battle they fought, even traversing, the dark and dirty sewage pipes. It may get a little bit bigger than what it actually was, but not terribly so. It was very exciting. And then, of course, she would reveal the information that she had gotten from Emerald as well about the realtor that he spoke with, and any information that she had about the building. So yeah, all of this kind of woven together in this very entertaining story.
You definitely notice, all of you that are paying attention, that Yobert definitely seems to really enjoy the action-oriented parts of that whole story. He's listening with rapt attention. Seems like, he almost seems to have a little bit more vigor in his in his frame as he's listening. You can tell that he enjoys that sort of thing. And I think as you mention what you learned about the building, he says, "Oh, that name is very helpful. I had done some initial inquiries and had only gotten as far as knowing that there had been some sort of a real estate consortium that owned the building. The magistrate at the district was having some trouble finding the paperwork for that, but a name will be very helpful."
Yes, the name that I was given was Berto Lunaros. Was the realtor that handled all the paperwork on behalf of the co-op.
Well, I don't know the name, but certainly that will be helpful. I will continue to pursue finding out more about the building and its history. So, let's see. I'm trying to think. So I guess I was trying to think if there was something else he was asking about specifically. No, I think he would. Right. Sorry. What he says is, as far as attaining any sort of standard adventuring gear, I think that I have made a preliminary arrangement with a local seller that is. Gosh, I'm just I had the cool name for the shop and now I've lost it because I didn't write it down. Well, I've forgotten the name of the shop because I just know the individual who runs it, but he sells standard adventuring gear and even a few common magical items. But he is also potentially a source for additional magical items if we were to look into them. He is a goblin who goes by the colorful moniker of Sticky Zicky. But don't let the name fool you. He has been in operation here in the Skyport for many years. He is, a pillar of the community, you might say, there in the Skyport. So I think that we established a line of credit there that you can obtain any sort of ordinary gear that you may feel is necessary. I've also done some initial inquiries, and it looks like it will take some time to try to procure a scroll of plane shift. And I tend to agree that something like that does seem like it might be useful, to say the least, in case of emergencies. But it does appear that they would cost upward of 25,000 gold pieces and take some weeks to procure. More gold to be sure if we want it faster. But so while I tend to agree, having something as an emergency backup does seem prudent. Such a thing would. I do have financial resources, but part of the way you have financial resources is by not spending the money too quickly.
Yes, your resources are not unlimited,
Correct.
and I, for one, am comforted knowing that we might have one in several weeks, as opposed to not having one at all.
Yes. So I will continue to pursue that line, but I just wanted to, highlight that is quite a costly item. What I will say in general, though, is that I think that I am comfortable, and this is all spelled out in the contracts, I'm comfortable with having you all be generally empowered to make purchases that you feel are necessary. But I would ask that one of you take on the responsibility of being a treasurer of sorts to just track the gold coming in and going out, just so that it can be audited as needed. But that is something that I am, generally speaking, willing to trust you on, and it's just a matter of the more we can keep track, the more we can ensure that things don't get out of control. Does that sound acceptable to everyone? Is there anyone who would be ready and eager to volunteer to be the bookkeeper?
Trinus says, not it.
Well, there is one of us that sort of has that in his name, their name. Kind of looking at sequential. That's,
Oh, sure.
Sequence 1, 2, 3. Yeah, anyway. As in
It
one
could
might
certainly
count.
serve in that function.
I would allow any of you to choose your roles in that regard, but I think that would be useful for me, just because a lot of what nobles can do in this modern era is move pieces of paper around, but one must have those pieces of paper, if you follow me.
Okay, no problem.
So, I know that there had been some discussion of wanting to do some research for some of those names. Is that something that you would want to pursue next? What are our next steps as a team?
We did get a bit sidetracked today. We wanted to go to the library, but I mean, as you heard, we did sort of have our hands full.
Indeed.
Some of us literally.
We should probably get a cart. And there's a loud clattering noise of metal on the floor over beside Nedry as he walks over to pick up the knife that he pulled off of this table and the knife he had from the evidence, and then examines the two of them to see if there's any difference from the
Well,
impact.
One of them is a fairly standard steel knife with a just a little flower on it, and the other is a piece of fine silver. Guess which one is which?
He makes a note.
But in any case, though, Yobert says if you have any difficulty accessing parts of the library that may not be readily available to all comers, let me know. I do know some people at the university and may be able to open some doors.
Master always says it's good to come with a note in hand, especially to me.
I understand. I can provide something to open the door in that regard, but it may be that some additional discussion would be required. A lot of those special archives are very tightly controlled for a variety of reasons, but certainly this will get you into the main archives, and hopefully that will be enough to get you started enough to know what else you might need.
That's probably okay. They don't really put many of the spells in those rooms.
So one note I would say is that I think, Nedry, as a wizard, something you would definitely know is that there absolutely are spellbook, you could call them libraries, maybe archives is better, but where the idea is that you absolutely can pay for access to spell books that have the various spells that you want, and they would also like sell the paper and ink that you would need. And so basically what I'm saying is it's not like the cost is still what the cost is in terms of what the materials cost, but they have places in town that are like for that purpose. Now, the ones that like the higher level of spell you're interested in, the harder and more expensive it's going to be to get. But there are places where you can go to say, I need this spell. So I will go to an archive where they have it, and then I'll copy it down in my book and so on.
Yep, there is a particular place he has been, which he's not welcome to come back. And my intention is hopefully that is the same place we are going, because that'll be fun.
Well, I think that you could go to one of those places, but I think it sounded like what you were wanting to do is like research history and names of stuff.
Yes,
Okay.
in this case.
Which I would say is generally not like the same sorts of places. Like I was thinking it's a little bit more like the difference between the local bookstore and the university archive where they keep the books that have to be under glass and you're not allowed to touch them with your skin. You know what I mean? It's like depends on what you're trying to research. There's going to be different levels of access required.
Yep, I think there was also the potential, not necessarily right away, but potential of going to one of the magical university libraries because of the weird stuff that we're looking into.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's actually part of what I kind of was assuming that you meant as far as research. But the other thing that he asks is, Zinhorn, I know that in my adventuring days, we sometimes made use of certain necromancy spell to speak with the bodies that we encountered. Is that something that could be done on either the body you found in the disposal or the one that you recovered today?
Yes, and in fact, I've already requested that they allow us that they get someone to do that for us.
Oh, splendid.
with the bones that we found in the disposal, had occurred to me to also do it with the body. Um, what did you call it, Nedry? The
Oh, the IDC, the
IDC.
intelligent devouring color.
Yes,
The body's name is Daryl, by the way,
Daryl.
or Old Daryl potentially. I'm not sure if that was a formal title.
Hmm. A
I'm
right bastard.
I
Nedry.
think that was closer to a formal title.
I'm curious about your acronym. You say intelligent. It does seem as though it was living, but did it show intelligence or just stimulus response?
It was difficult to test, and I didn't get a chance to do the full range of tests. It was sort of trying to kill us, or at least we were dying because we were close to it. So I didn't really get a chance to test all my theories, but it did seem to display some sort of intelligent behavior. I couldn't determine what exactly it was trying to do, other than probably running away. I'm hoping that it's not a unique creature. If it is, then, well, there's not much more that I can study about it, except perhaps if it can be revived. And I'm not really sure if revived is the right term either, because it might not actually be living, but sort of in a different state of matter and living and being. But if it's not a unique creature, then we have to really make sure we study it carefully, and because a creature like that could cause a lot of damage to a lot of people.
Brennan kind of pipes in at that and is saying, "Well, there's only so much you can do if it's trying to kill you."
Well, you could be creative.
Well, that's true. Hey, you remember those living statues? They both kind of just laugh and don't elaborate.
Living statues?
Well, I guess it's not so much. The name is a bit of an oxymoron, right? Because, like, if it were really just a statue, it wouldn't be living. But if it was, like, they looked like statues, and then they tried to kill us, and we had to blow them up. And,
Nedry kind of points over to Sequential. Like him?
no, no, no. Like, these looked like, like marble statues.
Well, in the
Oh.
Feywild, there is so many things that speak, but in the big story, the story, there is a definite character, I suppose we should say, that appears that is in fact intelligent living stone.
Yes, of course. I know that. Yeah.
Granite Bob.
Granite
Yes.
Bob. He's a favorite of many of the folks that listen to that tale.
But is it alive? Or is it a spirit? Does it have a soul? Or is there something else involved? I have a running theory about souls and spirits, but I don't really have a lot of the knowledge in that area. And every time I bring it up to Master, he just sort of says I don't need to know, which is never really a satisfying answer.
Well, in my experience, and I think that there are many in this universe that would agree, the lines between living and dead, spirits, souls, these lines are not always as firm and solid as we might think.
It's rather frustrating when that's true.
Indeed.
I would like to point out that some of us are still injured from today's fight, and I'm in need of, at the very least, a short rest, if not a long rest.
Oh, you know what? So I would absolutely say that you could have taken a short rest up at this point, but at the same
Okay.
time, I think in character, Yobert would say, well, of course, it sounds like you've had an adventurous day, to say the least. Feel free to retire at your leisure, and we will continue our planning anon.
So as the conversation wound down, Carolina most definitely would have taken out her lute and strummed a little bit as people talked, kind of after as folks were eating and in between conversation would just be entertaining a bit.
You probably get weird looks from Nedry as he's trying to figure out how the hell that works.
I could show you.
I think at some point, Brennan brings out like a drum, and he starts to accompany you, and he is terrible. He seems to enjoy it, but it's not good.
Well, the important thing with music is not necessarily to be good at it, but to love it.
He does seem to enjoy himself quite a bit. He's also had a fair amount of wine.
I have a perfect drinking song, but
So, does anyone else take a look at the contract? As dinner kind of like peters out, but it's kind of it's informal, right? Like there's no official like now we retire to the sitting room or anything like that. It's just kind of like
Yeah. I think as he was describing it, Sequential would have walked over and just signed one and then came back.
yeah,
Yeah.
like she
Same
wouldn't have
here.
even have thought twice. Just signed it and
Yep.
happy as you please.
Yeah, Trina too. She already decided that she was going to, so it wouldn't have been a big deal.
Nedry would have quoted Master. Always read everything you're going to sign. It might be your soul. Did you know that there's a whole division of the university dedicated to people who make magical contracts? I don't really know why they do it. It seems like a whole lot of work, but I do like the power of paper after all.
Oh,
And so
I
he'll
have
sit down.
stories about contracts. Oh my goodness.
Nedry will sit down and he'll go through it line by
Okay.
line. Maybe
Sure.
not understanding it all, but it's
well,
he
go
has
ahead
to.
and make an investigation check.
Sure. These dice have not been rolling well. And continue not to roll well. That is a 9.
There is a bit where for a second you think you are signing away your soul, but then you ask about it, and Yobert just says, "No, that's just talking about if you need to have your shoes replaced."
Oh, free shoes. I like that.
I get you every time.
It's
Homophones.
it's a legal
Homophones,
term
yeah.
of art. Just talks about maintenance, the wear and tear on your existing gear.
He kind of looks at the very shabby shoes he tends to wear. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And as satisfied as he can be, he signs it.
So there is one more toast offered as everyone signed, right? Like I didn't lose track of somebody.
Yep.
So yeah, one more toast, and so Yobert does just raise the glass and just say, "So, to whom are we toasting?"
What is the name? The name of the guy who wrote the letter?
Ellister.
Alistair.
Ellister. I would toast to Ellister for bringing us together to solve what seems to be a rather excellent mystery.
To Ellister.
To Ellister.
So, another thing to consider for everyone is at some point, if we wish to be someone that people will bring information to, it would be helpful to have a name of our organization. So, think on that. No need to rush.
I did
these
have
things.
one thought, but it was kind of silly, and I don't think it's a good idea.
I have 50.
And we haven't really
99
done
thoughts.
anything yet, so
Well, no need to rush, but in the meantime, it sounds like questions for the questions for the dead? Plans to research at the library? Perhaps visiting Sticky Zicky? But for now, I hope each of you is able to rest well, and we will continue our adventures.
Yay.
Yay.
So, it feels like that could be the end of the episode, and we could do that. It's a little bit early, but what do you guys think? Do you want to go ahead and go into the next day, or do you want to have some more conversations, or what do you think? I didn't really mean for that to it just kind of ended up feeling like the end of an episode, but
Right? I'm good for jumping into the next day.
Yeah, I'm good for
Yep.
jumping into the next day, and maybe we can do the Speak with Dead.
Hmm?
At least the one that I
sure.
arranged.
Mhm.
Well,
So,
didn't we have to come up with? We get 3 questions, right?
five.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
5 questions. Yeah,
Consolidate to 5 specific,
right.
Okay.
non-open-ended
Can I
questions.
click the long rest button?
Yes, yeah. So,
Okay.
so you're all able to get the long rest, but we can also say that like as you're getting ready for bed, you can kind of explain so that the what's important to know about Speak with Dead is, you can explain essentially what you know about it, which is that it's important to understand the soul of the person is not returning. This is like an echo of who the person was. And so a lot of what that means is that you can't tell them something. Like, I mean, if you wanted to like tell the person something, that's only useful so long as it's useful for you to say it. They don't hear it, right? It's just an echo of them. They only know what they would have known in life. They won't know anything that has happened since they died. Their answers are going to typically be short, sometimes cryptic. They are not forced to tell the truth if the person wouldn't have told the truth to you. So there can be some degree of trying to, like strategy sometimes if you have someone who might not want to tell you something, trying to figure out how you would get them to, because they don't have to answer if they wouldn't want to. So, and as Father Wolfram definitely pointed out, it's always best to figure out what questions you want to ask first. Now, you may, once based on answers, have follow-up questions, and so sometimes you make a last-minute audible switch, but, having a plan ahead of time is good.
Well, I think one thing we should definitely ask is how do we get to Dinuther?
Or maybe who Denethor is?
Well, because if you ask how do we get to noun, then it doesn't matter if it's a person, place, or thing.
But if Denethor is moved, then that information wouldn't help us. But if we know who Denethor is, then we could probably find them. Denethor could be a city, or it could be a person, or it could be a really nice book. But it would have moved in the however long it's been since this has been down there, at least 12 years. Especially if it wasn't safe.
Do we think the timing is important? Should we dedicate a question or more to pinpoint
know.
when he was there and if Isildi is still
So
might
he
exist?
wouldn't
or-
know how much time has passed. He
True,
wouldn't
yeah.
be able to tell you that.
You might know the year it was. when
But
he was-
right,
Yeah,
when-
right.
right.
Yeah.
But we would
Definitely
need a
should-
point of
But-
reference.
If he was from another pocket plane or something
Yeah.
of that nature, it might not. Time might
Mm.
might move a little differently.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the year would be important. Presumably, it'd be our year out here. I don't think he came from another pocket plane. I think he came from here.
Well, we definitely know he had the ability to travel between planes, whether those were pockets or, the big ones. So it stands to reason that maybe he wasn't from here and, traveled
In
between
the
places.
in the letter, he mentions the entrance to the disposal and how it was trapped. And we found the entrance to the disposal, which was in the basement of, or underneath the floor anyway, of the oaf. So unless it moved there afterwards, then he would have at least come through here.
Hmm.
That
Mhm.
doesn't mean this is where he was from.
That's true. But he was at least here and might know the year.
So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe perhaps a question of, what is the capital of the land or the liege of the land or something that could give us a frame of reference to know if we're even in the same place or not.
He also mentioned there was it's just from context it seemed like perhaps it was a spirit or deity of some sort. Marushka. He said, "I pray that Marushka's grace, and such and such." So that gives me the feeling that perhaps it was some sort of patron entity.
And Bethel, too. And Izeld.
Hmm.
And
That a
maybe
faith anybody's familiar with is not. No, I guess we already did checks on that. I think when we first read it.
there might be more in the
Did-
library about that.
Yeah.
Did the cleric do a religion check specifically on Marushka?
I don't recall if we did that. You could do one now.
I am trained in religion as well, so.
Okay, sure. You're muted, Paul.
All right, I'm going to do that check.
Okay.
And they a good roll.
I'm rolling
Oh,
middle
wow,
of the
so
road
am I.
tonight. That's a 9.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't ring a bell.
24.
24. That's pretty good. I think that even with a 24, what you have heard is just that it's a spirit of ocean journeys, which is a little weird because there aren't really very many of those. And I think
Marushka?
that, yeah. And I think that's all you know about it.
You heard of ocean journeys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there might be more to it for all you know, but that's what you've heard about. But, like, I think the context in which you heard about it is kind of about how sometimes, even when there's something that doesn't, there's not a lot of people, like, that would, worship or think fondly of a particular spirit, like, sometimes even if it's a small number of people, if it means enough to them, that can still manifest a spirit. And so, like, there's not a lot of ocean journeys in, say, Kamian because there's just one continent.
Someday I hope to figure out that question too. It's a long-term research project, though.
There's also a mention of probabilistic incantations with Professor Tinthus.
I'm pretty sure that we should be able to look that up at the library. Although I've asked some of my friends about it. It might be a month.
Well, if we want specific information, like from this particular person, they also mention the enemy, as in it's someone or a group of people. So we could ask, who is the enemy?
Mm-hmm.
Also a very good idea.
I have so many questions about how everything works. I suppose we can't ask those ones.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm assuming that this is all kind of happening as everyone is, getting ready for bed and everything. So, um, let me know if, whenever you guys are kind of ready for it to be, you know, the next morning.
How many
Alright.
questions do we have ready?
Did we end up with any questions?
Is anybody keeping track of them?
Who is the enemy? I think is a good one specific to this person. We should ask about Denethor. I think it is likely a place, but like, how do we find Denethor? Seems like a pretty general question. We could also ask, what is Denethor?
So when, and I'm asking because I don't know, when the attack happened and the thing killed the guy, was there any indication that he might know what it was? Like, was it a familiar thing, or was it just like, dude standing there, thing hit it?
It attacked him while he was trying to take that shield from that child. So he was just another scavenger.
Okay. Because I would have asked if it had looked like it was anybody familiar with it. Do you know what that was? Have you seen anything like that before? But if it just
I think we're
seems like,
crossing streams here.
Yeah. There's
Really?
so there's the body that you found in the disposal, Alistair, who wrote
Right.
the letter. Then
Right.
the blackened corpse that was killed by the paint splotch is different, a different person.
oh, okay, sorry,
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
too many corpses.
So many courses.
So early in the yeah.
Do we want to ask about the mention of the name Bethel? He says the pain was almost enough to make me wish for Bethel's cruel ministrations. Almost.
that
It sounds
that
like a
had
really
the
bad healer.
yeah. It had the feeling of like someone who treated them maybe as a child, or it's like a healer with a terrible bedside manner and was efficient and got the job done, but maybe didn't do it so nicely.
Carolina, do you
Painlessly.
have history?
Let me look. Hmm. No, I don't. Well, I have the jack of all trades thing. but
I
yeah,
will
it's
I will
all-
let you roll it, even if you don't have proficiency.
Okay, so that was a dirty 20.
Okay.
Actually rolled really well. Plus one.
You don't remember much about it, but you vaguely recall that there was a song you had heard about once that was like, there was some fragment of like, there was a book of like old song fragments that were like recovered from ages past, right? And there was a song that was about a healer that was supposedly so bad that she gave you as many injuries as she fixed. You don't recall that it was like, the name doesn't ring a bell, but you do remember hearing that there was a song about a healer like that. You don't and it was from from this one sort of selection of, like fragments of songs from a lost age, that sort of thing.
So you guys sort of you hear Carolina sort of hum a few notes and say, "There's something about that rings a bell. A very, very old song. It was just a little bit that I heard once, but yeah, it was a definitely a healer that hurt more than she helped, or that her cure was worse than the enduring
and specifically, it was not that she was incompetent; it's that she was mean. It's
okay.
like, so like it was like bad bedside manner that is what caused all of the excess pain.
So yeah, she relates that. Whether or not that is the same person, Maybe, but it's a very old song, so it could be.
Hmm.
Maybe. If the disposal was connected to his lab, it does kind of mean that the oaf was his lab originally. I wonder if he would know if he left it to somebody, or if he had an assistant or something. But that's probably his old.
Well, yeah, at the moment, we know who has been in control of that particular building for the last 52 years because Emerald owned it for 12, and then 40 years before that, for those 40 years, it was a co-op of businesses that used it for a warehouse.
Right, which went out of their way to make sure that their names weren't on
Oh,
any
right.
paperwork, which kind of sounds shady to me.
Also,
This
And
goes
for all
back a
we
lot
know-
farther then.
Yeah, for all we know, this laboratory was set up in the middle of, the wilderness or something, way back before, the city was the city. I mean, you've seen the old walls of, where, the city used to be and how much it's grown since then. So, I mean, maybe if it was far enough back, there just wasn't anything here before.
Hmm. Yeah.
Seems weird to have a basement in the middle of the desert, though.
Christiana, is the oath inside the old city walls or outside?
outside.
I don't know. Maybe the building was originally part of a university or some kind of business, and then over the years, the buildings got sold off, and I don't know. I think we have 3 questions so far, and this is completely up to change, but. Who or what is Denethor? I think Carolina had a better way of putting it.
How do we find Denethor? Because if it's a place, there may be a way to get there. If it's a person, there might be a way to track them. If it's a thing, it might be something that we can, trace.
I
or
think
track
those are
down.
2 questions that we have to ask. We have to ask both of them.
And who is the enemy?
Yeah.
I think is a good one.
So
Who is your enemy? Because there might be
Well, because
more
the
than
letter
one?
did not specifically say it was his enemy. It said the enemy. So it could have been like an enemy of, if Denethor was a country, it could have been, an enemy, another kingdom or something. Or it could be a group of people, or it could be one person, but this person is an enemy to many people.
right.
So
So who or what is Denethor? Where can we find Denethor? Who is the enemy?
maybe the last 2 leave open for follow-up questions.
I'd like to have like 2 questions that we're a little iffy on in case we don't have follow-up questions.
What is his eld's full name?
Yeah. Isilde. Yeah, what is Isilde's full name?
Maybe the dead person has a full name as well. Because I think it was just Alistair, right, in the letter?
Yes, that's a
Yes.
good one. What is your full name?
Yeah.
So those can be our questions in reserve.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this echo of Alistair is not going to know how much time has passed.
No.
And I'm wondering if there's a way to phrase a question that might give us a sense of time.
What
I had
year were
one
you
thought.
trapped?
Well, I have one thought. So Mount Rushama is a constant fixture And as we know, it's grown a lot since the days of the heroes of legend. And maybe there is maybe we could use that as a marker of time, like how big was Rushama when last you saw it, or something along that line.
I
Um,
I think that wouldn't be a very precise measure.
Yeah.
so
I
we,
knew Rashama when it was just a baby hill.
It was
Molehill.
just a little molehill, yeah.
What about the name of a ruler? Like
um,
ruler, like who
oh,
was
that's a good one.
that should narrow it down to at least a ruler's lifetime, if not more.
You know what the name and uh, yeah, who was the ruler of your country?
But if they're talking about where they're from, Dinuther, and Dinuther is not on the material plane, that might not be something we can track.
Well, it's not about that though. It's about here, right? Whatever
So we need to
or
be more
whoever
specific.
Dinither is, we're asking about the year here. I don't
Right.
know why we don't just ask for the year. What year did you get trapped in
Yeah.
the disposal?
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that better than what is your full name?
I kind of like that
Or-
too.
Well, so which question should we get rid of? What is Isild's full name, or what is your full name? I want to say, like, get rid of Isild's full name.
I'm not so sure. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a
it would
tough
be
one.
nice to know Elister's name, but Elister isn't the person we're going to be looking up. Isilde is, if they were still out here, and they might have family, and that family would have that same name.
Well, but Alistair was an inventor, and he may have invented something important enough for people to make note of it and make records of it and attribute it to him. So he might be in the library. We don't know.
I'm also wondering, okay, so I think it's reasonable to say that his workshop it used to be part of what is now the Oath. No, it's the Clumsy Oath Inn, right?
Cunning oath.
Cunning Oath. But that basement could have been there it's been there for at least 40 years. It could have been there for 100 years or 500 years. See, if Isilde was on the outside, she might have left a longer trail through history than Elister did. If he was young, and if whoever sabotaged his disposal, Pocket Dimension, succeeded, they could have stolen all of his stuff and effectively wiped out his name. But Isilde might have left more of a trace through history. She might have married or traveled or achieved great things, lived a long time. Who knows?
There are multiple parts of this theory which could be very wrong. We never really determined whether Alistair might have been one of the group of people who actually rented out the building. So it may only be 12 years ago. Or one of the things that has been noted in numerous parts of the city, although I haven't yet been able to find one of them, is that sometimes parts of the city move around. I'm hoping that's not true, because that will be very difficult to track. Although it will be nice to have an actual stable example. I mean, stable isn't probably the right word.
Consistent.
Present. But if those assumptions aren't true, and we'll know a little bit more when we talk to the body person thing, but we should keep that in mind, that we have to eliminate these hypotheses as we go along. I've constrained it to only the first
Well, second level problems. There are others that come to mind, but I don't think that's going to help right now.
So do we? So I think what year did you get trapped in this disposal is going to really help with the rest of the research, because that's going to narrow our research time frame. I think that should be the first question.
Maybe specify what year was it on the material plane when you got trapped.
Okay.
Yeah.
What year
When-
was it on the material plane when you got trapped in the disposal?
When you ask these questions, I mean, I understand mostly that it's not actually the person you're talking to. I have a theory that it might actually be a small spirit that was created by the passing of the person. Their impact upon the universe sort of reflected upon the skeleton of the thing having a sort of liminal state. But that's not important. But they could lie to us. So we have to make sure that he believes us.
Yeah, but we're not talking to him. We're talking to this echo, and while it could lie, I think the way in which we ask the question, um, if we do it right, we'll have less suspicion, which is kind of why I want to start off with the year first, because that constrains everything, and he would not have lied in the letter. Let's assume that he didn't lie in the letter.
We should probably show him the letter as proof that of what we're trying to say.
Well, you won't have eyes, so maybe on one of the questions, like say what year was it when you got trapped, and then maybe the second question, say in your letter to, I've forgotten her name.
Isolde.
Is yes, in your letter, you mentioned Dinuther. Who or what is Dinuther? And maybe if knowing that we have this letter and that would make our intentions to, I don't know, put his spirit at rest, make those known.
One brief note. You mentioned he wouldn't have eyes, which is technically true, but he wouldn't have ears either, right? I think that the magic of the spell kind of accounts for that. So you don't have to say like, oh well, he won't be able to see us because he doesn't have eyeballs anymore. It's a magic spell, so it's
Have a presence.
But I think outright stating it might be helpful. I don't know.
Yeah.
Since our ability to communicate is so limited.
so.
That uses a lot less words than I was considering.
So I'm going to suggest something. You guys let me know if you would rather play out the details of it. But I would imagine as we fade to black with everyone discussing the questions, we can sort of crossfade, dissolve into you're at the temple the next day. You've made your way there. The skeleton has been prepared. Father Wilfram is there. I mean, would you rather do the nuts and bolts of all of that, or we can just kind of crossfade?
Let's just jump in. I'm good. Let's go.
Crossfade works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Crossfade.
I'm a
Open
big
in without a
fan
net.
of saying, like, if this was a movie,
Yep.
we wouldn't have you going to bed and then getting up in the morning and then walking over, and we could do all of that. But in this case, I think we know what we're talking about here. So
Oh, man, we don't get to role play walking.
We could do a montage with very exciting music.
you can walk home after, maybe even stop for ice cream. Anyway,
Well, yeah.
So you've made your way to the great big temple of Rushama that's in the old city here in Pashan. But at the same time, you're not going to like the main sanctuary because this is a smaller ritual being performed as part of their, in part of their mausoleum chambers. But you've all arranged this with Father Wolfram. One quick question, Father Wolfram. I don't think we established what race he is. Do you have a thought?
I would think that he would be a dwarf.
Okay. I like that. All right, so we meet Father Wolfram, whom Zinhorn seems to know well. They greet each other warmly. And they have on kind of a beer out in the, BIER, out in the room. It's a big slab table in this, it's kind of a workroom, but, nice. Meaning that this is the sort of room. Well, what I mean is it's really like what this is it's like in like a funeral parlor where they have a room it's like a couch and a table, and it's where family members can go to just kind of be apart from all the rest of the business when they need to kind of be alone or have discussion in private and that sort of thing. It's like that, except like, so this is for people to be present during a ritual of this kind is what this room is for. So it's like tasteful but somber and all of that sort of thing.
So it's like a funereal parley,
Yeah.
as opposed to a funeral parlor.
Ha! Yeah, very good. So, but yes, the bones have been laid out on the slab here, and Father Wolfram looks around and says, "Because I will be casting the spell, I specifically will have to ask the questions, but I will ask whatever questions you require. Is there anything you would want me to know or context about the questions first?"
Show him the letter. Yeah, we're going to show him the letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pull it out of my book.
And explain that this is a big mystery to us. We don't know when this happened. We don't know why it happened. We don't know, like, at the very least, we'd like to track down his family and
Right.
let them know that we have his remains. And, there may actually be some kind of a great sinister plot here that we have uncovered part of.
Right. Yeah, he reads it and definitely says, "Oh, this is a tragic story, to be sure. I hope that this ritual will be helpful. The thing that stands out to me just in reading this is that he clearly wrote the letter expecting her to find him one way or the other, but she didn't."
If she did, she left the letter behind. But seeing as how the pocket dimension was booby-trapped so that you couldn't get out, the only way she would have been able to leave it behind is if she knew the new code word to get out, and therefore was part of what happened to him. Or more likely, something, he vanished from her life and she never found out where he went and why.
It does seem like, the idealist in me, weeps for the tragedy that she never knew what happened. The part of me that can't help but be a little cynical wonders if she knew, because she was involved.
Yeah, well,
It's also
a
possible
te-
she was dead.
It's a
that's also
testable theory.
possible, too. Yep. Well,
So, I can cast the spell and pass along your questions.
Okay. So,
I think he begins the ritual, and I think as he does, the light seems to dim in the room. Light or sound rather kind of becomes, kind of muffled and flat here in the room, and gradually the the bones that had already been laid out in approximately the right positions seem to shift slightly more, as though they're being moved to where they ought to be in life, and a spectral body begins to sort of coalesce around them, translucent but present. And there is sort of a gasping whisper of,
What does he look like?
uh,
Like, is he human or?
I think that there is not enough detail to really know for sure. He seems to be humanoid, as would be indicated by the skeleton. You would guess probably human or a half elf, but the you don't get a lot of detail. It's just kind of wispy hint of features. And he speaks and says, "This magic is to serve you, spirit, and help to finish your unfinished business, and to ensure those you care about are cared for. We have questions for you." And it turns to the rest of you.
Baba Booey, Baba Booey. Oh,
what year was it on the material plane when you got trapped in the disposal?
I'm not going to necessarily have him like repeat word for word. We'll just kind of assume that that's happening, right?
Right.
But he asks that, and the spirit says, "There are too many methods of year reckoning, but it was 15 years since the planes aligned with one another.
hmm.
In your letter to Isild, you mentioned Denethor. Who or what is Denethor?
That you know that name at all is too much. Better for it to be forever lost."
Hmm.
It's say it and not him or her or.
Did say that you know the name is too much. Better for it to be lost.
Yeah.
Still a little ambiguous.
I suppose it could refer to the name.
But of course, you know the name.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay, so do we want to skip the where can we find Denethor question?
Don't think you'll be cooperative.
I don't think so either. So I'm thinking we should skip that question.
About the enemy,
Yeah.
asking about the enemy.
Yep.
Who or
Who is
what
the
is.
enemy that you mention in your letter?
Those who would seek to break the seals to unleash the nightmares.
That doesn't sound very nice.
No, doesn't
Sounds
sound very
exciting.
good at all.
Can't argue with the definition.
What is Isild's full name?
She is Isilde. She left behind the rest of her name when she left behind Dinuthir.
What about his full name? Maybe might give us that.
Same
So
answer.
what was the first word that he said?
She left the rest of her name behind when she left Dinuthir.
Yeah, I thought he said something before the word she, but
No,
I think it's held.
it may have just been a sound.
yeah, her name was Isilde.
Okay.
She left the rest of her name behind. Yeah.
Okay. When she left behind Dinuthir. What is your full name?
I left my name behind when I left Dinuthir. I think that's 5, right? It was the,
Yep.
That's 5.
enemy.
Yeah.
And so when you see the magic beginning to fade, and Father Wolfram does seem to be, he's beginning, his signs and his gestures to sort of complete the ritual. And there is, as the breath seems to fade and the spectral body is fading, he does still give out just a whisper that you almost don't quite hear, but like you believe he says, I longed for home, but more than that, I longed to never see it again. But then that's it.
I longed for hope,
Home.
but home. But more than that, I longed to never see it again. Ooh, that's ominous.
So, Father Wilfram looks around and says, it is frequently true that the dead don't give us all the details we would like, but I hope that some of that will be helpful.
I hope so too. Thank you. All right, so shall we crossfade back to the flying castle?
Well, I think probably this is a good note to go ahead and end tonight's episode on, with the lingering mystery. And of course, probably on this same day, you might also have some other things to do. But I think we'll leave it there for now. We do already have a question in the chat, but while we cover that, we can also, if anyone else watching has questions for the characters, feel free to type them in. But we've got a question from Smartmaster. Carolina, you seem to have a deep fascination for Trina. Why is that?
Well, she's just such a unique person, and I've never seen anyone like her. And have you seen how strong she is? And the things that she can smell, and just how perceptive she is. She's so very unique, and I just love that.
All true things.
She admires your trunk. Let's just put it like that.
I mean, it's magnificent.
And someday I will get to sing one of those songs. No worries.
Honk for your trunk? No. How's that go?
I don't know. I hope you sing it.
I don't have one about Trina yet, but
I meant Mark. I wanted to hear Mark sing "Honk in the Trunk." No offense to Starla, of course.
maybe I'll write one for Mark.
I was just thinking
That'd be
that
dangerous.
if
There you
Trina
go.
had picked up some of those gadgets from the disposal with her nose, then she would have junk in her trunk.
Yeah, it's that kind of girl.
All right. Well, mysteries, questions that need answering. We'll find out more next week on so many levels.
So
Oh.
Thank you, everybody,
we
for listening and or watching, and we'll be back.